Electric cars are changing. What do I mean by that? I don't know if any of you have noticed in recent times, but some interesting changes are going on in the world of electric cars. And in this video, I thought I'd explain what those changes are and what I think they mean. So let's have a look at the situation. First of all, one of the major ways that electric cars are changing right now is smaller electric cars. When the EV revolution sort of began, like in the past couple years when everybody started knocking out electric car after electric car, they were all SUVs and crossovers, big heavy things that are unsafe if you're a pedestrian getting hit by one, and expensive to make and heavy and all that. I spoke about this in my previous video about station wagons. But now that's sort of no longer the case. They're starting to experiment with smaller electric cars because a lot of automakers are realizing that really it just doesn't work when all you have is SUVs in your lineup, and especially electric SUVs. So smaller electric cars are starting to become a thing, and we might see a lot more of them in the coming years because smaller electric cars are cheaper to produce, they're better for the environment to produce, and they just make a lot of sense because that makes them more affordable, but they still have all the benefits you might want out of an electric car. A great example of this is the Citroën All-E concept. This wacky little concept car that takes its influence from stuff like the 2CV of yesteryear is designed to give us a glimpse into the future of Citroën's electric cars. And Citroën actually explained that they aren't really interested in making massive, heavy, overpriced electric cars. They think that the way of the future is smaller, more affordable, and sustainable in terms of from an ecological point of view, so recycled materials and stuff like that. They think that that's the way forward for electric cars, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. Another great example of smaller but effective electric cars is the Volkswagen ID.2 All concept, which will eventually become a part of the lineup as most likely the Volkswagen ID.2. This car is the size of a VW Polo, but it has the same wheelbase as the Golf, and it has the same interior room as the Golf. And when it goes on sale in the coming years, I think around the middle of the decade, 2025 probably, Volkswagen claims that it'll cost less than €30,000, or about less than $30,000, which is fantastic. It'll be half the price of an ID.4, pretty much. So that's one of the major ways that electric cars are changing right now. They are getting smaller, they're making great use of their space, and they're becoming more and more affordable. But this change regards only electric cars, because there are other things that are changing the entire electric car space as a whole. One of them is that automakers are realizing that the sudden and absolute transition to electric cars is not really possible in the time that they've been given by the European Union, because the European Union is currently putting a lot of pressure on automakers for Euro 7 emissions regulations and the stopping of the sale of internal combustion engine cars by 2035, but they will allow an exception for e-fuels or synthetic fuels. We'll come back to that later in this video. And every automaker is slowly realizing that that type of transition is not going to be possible in the allotted time because the European Union predicted the Euro 7 regulations to go into force by 2025, which is only a couple of years away, July 2025 actually, on the nose 2 years. And all of the work that's needed to make cars Euro 7 compliant is way too difficult to do in such a short amount of time, and it'll make the cars more expensive. In fact, when there was a lot of hubbub about Euro 7, Volkswagen said that they'll stop making the Polo because this regulations will just make it too expensive. And, you know, you have these regulations, you want to save the planet, but you're going to make the cars more expensive and people are not going to be able to buy them like they would before. So it kind of seems pointless. And also, the complete transition to electric cars with no other alternatives is bullshit. That's just my opinion. I know that might cause some friction in the comments, but I think that the full transition to EVs with no other alternatives without even considering the other alternatives is bullshit. Let me explain why. So, you know, like 20 years ago when we had feature phones, you know, all your Sony Ericssons and your Siemens and your, I don't know, LGs and stuff. And then in 2007, Apple came out with the original iPhone, and then we started getting more and more smartphones. And smartphones are indeed what sells the most today. But you can still buy feature phones if you want, because there are some people that simply prefer using feature phones. whether it's because they're elderly and they don't really understand smartphones, or it's because they don't really need all the features that a smartphone has, or they just need it for work. You can still buy a feature phone today, and actually we found a way to make them better with KaiOS, that whole light feature phone operating system that can run some smartphone apps like Google Maps and what have you. You've probably heard of it if you follow the tech space. And that's all well and fine. You have a smartphone with all the features that you might want and necessarily don't need, but you also have a feature phone if that's what you prefer. Now imagine if, like 10 years ago, some random governing body came out and said, we're gonna ban feature phones from existing. Everyone will be forced to switch to smartphones. The public wouldn't have taken that all that well, huh? That's exactly what's happening with electric cars. But the European Union finally caved and they let other automakers explore different alternatives. And from what I understand from this one article that I read, I'll put a link in the description so you can read it, other automakers are slowly warming up to the idea of e-fuels in the future. We all know that Porsche is investing in e-fuels, obviously, and also Toyota is investing in ways to keep the internal combustion engine alive, obviously with hydrogen. I recently heard that they also did one that runs on ammonia, which is insane. But slowly other automakers are starting to warm up to the idea of e-fuels. There was this one article I also read, I'll leave a link in the description for that also. The CEO of Stellantis, Carlos Tavares, he basically went on saying that we don't know what's going to happen in the future. If it's electric cars, fine. If it's e-fuels, fine also. He was just saying that Stellantis is ready for whatever happens in the future. And honestly, I think that e-fuels do have a future. Now, I don't want to be misunderstood here. I don't think that electric cars should not exist at all, because they have their own place and they are good at the things that they do. Because I've driven a couple of electric cars and it's not bad. You know what I mean? Like, they're good cars, but, you know, why waste so many years of developing this technology, the internal combustion engine, just throw it out the window within 15 years after 100 years of evolving the internal combustion engine, just so we can switch to electricity because somebody said that we should? It's all just a bit bizarre. And I've also noticed, I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, maybe it's just me seeing things, but all the conversation about electric cars is starting to slow down just a little bit. Like, it felt for me, like, again, this is in my experience, you can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about this, but previously, it was all about the electric cars, right? So you have electric car news after electric car news, blah, 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 blah. But now it just seems to be a bit calmer. Like, every automaker is treating their entire lineup equally, and they are promoting internal combustion engine cars as well. Like, Kia recently facelifted the Picanto. Kia's big on the EV stuff. We know the EV9, the 3-row SUV, that's coming soon, but they facelifted the Picanto. The new Peugeot 208, that was recently facelifted. They're still going to offer internal combustion engines. And the new hybrid powertrain as well. Peugeot's talking about that as well. And, you know, a whole bunch of new supercars and what have you also get internal combustion engines. The Koenigsegg Gemira that was just announced, the production car, that's going to have a V8 as well as the 3-cylinder. It is a hybrid, but, you know, they're starting to treat every part of the lineup equally. And I think that the automakers are slowly starting to believe in a future where we have all the alternatives. Because, again, it just doesn't make sense to destroy and forget about what we already have and focus on this new thing that's still being developed and still isn't the absolute best that it can be. And in order for us to fix this problem that we have with the global warming and the emissions, we're taking something new, sort of newfangled, that hasn't been made the best that it can be, and we're taking that and running with it instead of focusing as well on improving something that we already have, which is internal combustion engines. Internal combustion engines can be made more environmentally friendly with e-fuels and a whole bunch of other stuff. And this point that I always make to my friends in real life, the fact that Toyota and Porsche and Mazda as well are investing so much in e-fuels and stuff like that, they probably know something that we don't. Like, they probably have seen, maybe they're working on something behind the scenes. We can't know until it's, like, ready for use. And the e-fuel conversation, I'm a huge advocate for e-fuels. I don't think I've ever made that public on this YouTube channel, but I am. I will have a separate video talking about synthetic fuels versus electric cars, even though I kind of already included that in this video. Another point I wanted to make here is that we're slowly starting to see some of the setbacks of electric cars that are still setbacks at the moment. They might not be in a few years, but at the moment they are. So the range conversation, that's the main one. Like, all of this talk about new battery technology with more energy density, or solid-state batteries or better aerodynamics to improve range. There's the charging infrastructures in some places in the world is still not the greatest. I know in Macedonia we have a total of 20 electric car chargers around the whole country. That was a nightmare when I had the ID4 and the 308 hybrid on test drive. And for enthusiasts especially, electric cars, as they say, have no soul, which I don't really agree with. Like, electric cars have their own unique character, but it's very difficult to get enthusiasts warmed up on EVs for the most part, because the new Hyundai Ioniq 5N, you've probably seen on the news that it has simulated gears and a synthesized engine sound, and I was on Instagram the other day and some person was demonstrating the features, and the comments section were calling the synthesized engine sound and the simulated gear shifts gay. Now, you're allowed to not like it, but come on. My point is with that it's very difficult to get enthusiasts warmed up on electric cars. Now, do I think that there's a way to make electric cars feel like internal combustion engine cars? Yes, in a way there probably is, but they haven't really explored those options yet. I think that the Dodge Charger Daytona SRT, when that comes out, that's going to have something like that. But my point here is EVs have a few setbacks here and there. They're also really heavy, and the SUVs especially, like I've said before, aren't particularly safe if you get into an accident with them. Not if you're inside the electric SUV, but if you're in the other car. And also they're terribly unsafe for pedestrians, and at the moment it's a little bit, polluting producing them because it involves lithium mining for the batteries and what have you. But I am excited to see what's going to happen with small, affordable EVs. The Volkswagen ID2 All that I mentioned before, the Citroën Ali, and the Renault 5 Electric, which Renault is currently prototyping and is about to release next year, I believe, in 2024. So yeah, that's how I think electric cars are changing and what's going on in the electric car space. I apologize, I'm very passionate about this topic, and I went off on a bit of a rant and a tangent. But let me know what you think about this whole thing in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter. I will have a link in the description like always, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.